illness and suffering of my own, until 11 years later I came almost a stranger again to our government with another work, which I believed to be for its good and the good of our people. This time I brought the idea of the Treaty of Geneva, asking our government, at the request of other governments, to examine and to unite with it, if found desirable. This effort with the government covers 5 years of hard, continuous labor, during which was sought the aid of friends known in other years. At the end of this time, by advice of our second martyred president and 3 members of his historic cabinet, James G. Blaine, William Windom, and Robert T. Lincoln, a national society was formed, known as the Association of the American Red Cross, and by desire and nomination of President Garfield, I was made its president and requested to name my officers. The association was formed during the winter of 1880 to 81, with the view on the part of President Garfield of facilitating the adoption of the treaty which he would name in his next message, which message was never written. Before the message, he too had joined the martyred ranks, and his gentle successor Arthur filled his chair and kept his promise, and through action of his own executive department, the treaty was adopted, endorsed by action of the Senate, proclaimed by the President to our people, later ratified by the international powers in the Congress of Bern, with the pledge to render relief to unfortunate victims of war, and the privilege, by my request, of rendering similar relief to the victims of great national calamities or disasters. All this had been accomplished by the kindly help of a few personal friends, tireless and unrewarded, and while the news of the accession of the government of the United States to the Treaty of Geneva lit bonfires that night, for I cabled it by their request in the streets of Switzerland, France, Germany, and Spain, a little 4-line paragraph in the congressional doings of the day in the Evening Star of Washington alone announced to the people of America that an international treaty had been added to their rolls. No personal distinction had been bestowed, no one honored, no one politically advanced, no money of the government expended, and like other things of like nature and history, it was left in obscurity to make its own way and live its own hard life. Thus the spring of 1882 found us, a few people, tired and weak, with 5 years of costly service, a treaty gained, with no fund, no war nor prospect of any, and no helpful connection with or acknowledgment by the government. Soon the news of half the state of Michigan on fire called us to action on our own laws of civil relief. A little draft on the purse of the new, inexperienced president of the association paved the way for an agent to go to the field. Others generously joined. All reported to our friend and advocate, Senator Omar D. Conger of Michigan. Some supplies were sent, a society or 2 formed to provide and forward them. The agents remained until the suffering was relieved, and thus the first field relief work of which we have any record in the United States was commenced. Meanwhile, I had been asked by the Senate to write the history of the Red Cross and show the official action taken by our government on the acceptance of the treaty, which history the Senate would have printed at the government printing office. This volume I prepared as requested. 1,000 copies were printed for information to the public, to be circulated by the society. But with no frank or other means provided, and with a postage of some 10 cents a volume, we were compelled to limit the circulation to the means. The following year, 1883, a disastrous rise in the Ohio River called for our aid. Dr. J.B. Hubble, who had been our agent the year before, was called from Michigan University, where he was completing a course, to examine the needs of the inhabitants and take such relief as we could provide. There was little loss of life, and the destruction of property lay largely in the loss of stock and washing away of the soil, vegetation, and the means of reproduction. A remarkable provision for this latter loss was made by the gift of Mr. Hiram Sibley, the noted seed dealer of Rochester, who had become associated with the Red Cross, being an old-time friend of the family of its president, of $10,000 worth of seed to replant the washed-out lands adown the Mississippi. As the waters ran off, the mud immediately baked in the sunshine, making planting impossible after a few days. Accordingly, Mr. Sibley's gift was sent with all haste to our agent at Memphis, and in 48 hours, by train and boat, it was distributed in the 4 states, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and planted for the crops of the coming season. Besides this generous gift of material, a little money had been raised and sent by the 3 societies of the Red Cross which had been formed, namely, Dansville and Syracuse, a few hundreds, something more from the Red Cross at Rochester, always thoughtful and generous, which served to help in the distribution of clothing and supplies promiscuously sent. And at the finish of the work, when every donation had been carefully acknowledged, $1,000 and some cents were left in the treasury unexpended. A cyclone occurring within a few months in Louisiana and southern Alabama, cutting a swath from New Orleans to Mobile, decided us to send $800 of this reserve to the Secretary of the Red Cross Society of New Orleans, which sum was forwarded by our Vice President, Mr. A.S. Solomons. This left a sum of $200 and some cents in the treasury, with which to commence another field. This was the commencement of 1883. In May, at the solicitation of General Butler, then Governor of Massachusetts, I took the superintendence of the Massachusetts Woman's State Prison at Sherborne at the customary salary of $1,500 a year. To this duty the legislature added, after my arrival, those of secretary and treasurer, without increase of salary, discharging the former incumbent, a man, at $3,000 a year. I accepted the new duties, became my own bondsman for $10,000, by transfer of that amount of bonds from my bankers, Brown Brothers, New York, to the Massachusetts State Treasury at Boston, remaining in charge of the prison until the close of the year and the retirement of General Butler as governor. In the short and interrupted existence of our association, scarce 2 years, our few official advisers had formed some general regulations relating to our course of procedure. Realizing that to be of any real service as a body of relief for sudden disasters, we must not only be independent of the slow, ordinary methods of soliciting relief, but in its means of application as well, it was decided, first, to never solicit relief or ask for contributions. Second, not to pay salaries to officers, paying out money only to those whom we must employ for manual labor, and as our officers served without compensation, they should not be taxed for dues. Third, to keep ourselves always in possession of a stated sum of money to commence a field of disaster, this sum to be independent even of the closed doors of a bank, which might prevent leaving for a field on a Sunday or holiday. Fourth, to take this sum of our own, going directly to a field with such help as needed, giving no notice until there, overlooking the field, and learning the extent of the trouble and conditions of the people, making immediate and reliable report to the country through the Associated Press, some of whose officers were our own Red Cross officers as well. These reports would be truthful, unexaggerated, and non-sensational statements that could be relied upon. Fifth, that if, under these conditions, the people chose to make use of us as distributors of the relief which they desired to contribute to the sufferers, we would do our best to serve them while at the field, make report directly to each and all contributors, so far as in our power, and proceed to carry out any directions and apply the relief at hand in the wisest manner possible among a dazed and afflicted community. To inaugurate this method, I, as president,